Hello and welcome to Hidden Truths College of Metaphysics and my birthday pie party. So today is our first coaching call. So some of you guys are just invited as guests to kind of get to know the material and what we're all about. And some of you are actually enrolled in the course. So I'll kind of speak to both things. All of the content is pre-recorded. And for those of you who have made headway in that content, these coaching calls are opportunities to come and ask your questions and also practicum. One of the major things that's missing in astrology programs, including the one that I took many years ago, is the practical piece. So when we decided to offer these weekly coaching calls, it's to help you really not only understand your own chart, but as you go through the different levels, really have the practical so that you can actually finish this program being a viable astrologer, even if you don't want to read for others. So today, because we have some additional guests, and for those of you who are sort of just a guest to my birthday party, you'll get a pre-recorded lecture so that you can kind of see the way that we're organizing content. But today I want to kind of talk about astrology and why it's sort of resuming is very popular lately. Talk a little bit about that. I also want to link it into, we teach a Greek mythology basis, even though all mythologies are viable in astrology. So I want to talk to you why we use Greek mythology in particular. And then I want to talk to you about the basics of the anatomy chart. So it's like the anatomy of the astrology chart so that you know from the get-go what you're looking at. And then of course, I'll answer any questions depending on where you are in your astrology studies, whether they're at HTC or not, and where you are in your content if you have started watching the videos. So what is the craze about? So spiritually, there are cycles that rule eras and what are called yugas. These are like 2,000 year periods up to 20,000 year periods. And they rule whatever is happening sort of globally. And we have entered astrologically what we call the age of Aquarius. My particular guidance has indicated that COVID was like the real start, if you will. Although a lot of different people will say that it started back in the 60s or in Y2K. So there's not a real concise date as to when the age of Aquarius started. But I think at this point, most people would agree that we're in the age of Aquarius. And that age lasts about 2 to 2,100 years. These aren't exact dates because the way that the Earth tilts on its axis doesn't allow us to have an exact date, but an age range. And then in the Vedas, some of the most ancient texts of spirituality, we have what are called yugas. These are like the golden age or the bronze age. And we're in what's called Kali Yuga. Kali is the goddess of death and destruction. And that's why we are seeing so much of old structures destroyed in our life, statues and governments and so forth. And we're going to continue to see more of that. So from a yuga perspective, we're in the Kali Yuga layered on the age of Aquarius. Aquarius is the god that is linked to the water bearer. And the concept is humanity. Coming down and becoming more human, understanding that we're all one from a spirituality perspective. And astrology is ruled by the sign Aquarius and the planet Uranus. So we're in an era where astrology now becomes the religion of the hour of the day. So we're going to see much more of this as the months and the years progress. And I don't know how much you guys follow in terms of astrology or websites, but there was this big series called Changing of the Gods that has been pretty much, if you follow anything like this on Instagram or Facebook, it probably showed up in your feed. And Harvard researchers, some of the top psychotherapists, spiritual therapists, transpersonal psychologists got involved in this project to explain to people how these planetary influences influence our life, our government, our social structures. So this is the order of the day. So it's the right time to study astrology, to not only understand what's happening in your own life, but what happens in the world around us. So it's a really auspicious time to be participating in astrology. Any questions about that? Have you had any questions about why this is suddenly like the thing? No? Okay. So why study astrology? Well, this is the Temple of Apollo at Delphi in Greece. Back in the day, this was believed to be sort of like the center of civilization. And at the entrance of the temple, there are three things stated. Man, know thyself, nothing in excess, and certainty brings insanity. And the beauty of astrology is that it is the most powerful self-development tool, and we'll get to that more in a moment. It shows us exactly where we have excess, and the other side of excess is scarcity, so either one. And that we get to choose. There's nothing certain in the chart other than understanding planetary movements and transits that activate aspects of self that might be dormant and may lead us to choose a course of action. Part of it is magical and mystical in terms of the universe is to get you to move in a certain direction, but there is also a level of personal decision making and free will. So this isn't deterministic, and it's not all free will, it's a combination. And so there's not certainty, but there is certainty. So it's sort of that midpoint that all spirituality teaches. In my models, for anybody who's ever followed anything that I write about the 48 to 52, which is the midpoint. But every spiritual tradition says this in one way or another. And the way to sort of master your chart, if you will, is to find those areas of excess or scarcity and find that midpoint so that you can be the most whole and individual that you can in this lifetime. So it's very, very personalized to each individual, the astrology chart, but at the same time, it's rooted in quantum physics. It's rooted in that everything is connected, a spiritual law called the principle of mentalism, that we're all one. So you not only can see your own self in a chart, you can see your family, you can see your ancestors, you can see everything in society and in any environment in your birth chart. So it's not one level, it's multifaceted and multi-layered, but we start with ourself, understanding that everything in our life is a projection of what's going on in our head. So in your content, you have a video series called It's All in Your Head, part 1 and 2. And I go very in depth about how everything that's happening in your external life and what the chart displays is a projection of your own mind. Any questions? So why astrology? So I said it's the best self-development tool. I like to say that your astrology chart is you on a piece of paper. Now, you're not always wearing all of the clothes in your closet, right? You've got one outfit or two outfits a day, and that's sort of how we play out our chart. We're living out certain aspects of our wardrobe, of our mental wardrobe, as we live through life. But all aspects of it, your entire wardrobe, all of what are called the archetypes in your psyche, all facets of you, the shadow, the light, the high consciousness, the low consciousness, all of it is on that paper. And it is a picture of everything going on in your psyche. And it is the #1 self-development tool because it's extremely personalized, but yet reflects everything holistically in your life. It shows where you have excess or scarcity. Excess and scarcity are concepts that are in the human mind. They're human constructs. They don't really exist in the spiritual realm, but because we're embodied, we feel as if there are areas that we overdo or underdevelop, and it isn't true. And part of using the astrological tools to find a way to meet yourself in the middle where it's not too high or too low. In the spiritual texts, it actually says the high highs or the low lows. So too much excess or too little is actually imbalance. And the goal of a lifetime, and through the use of astrology easily, is to achieve what we call self-mastery. And so nothing is high, high, and nothing is low, low, but rather we balance the swings of the pendulum. That's a spiritual law called the law of polarity. So if you have these super high swings or super low downs, it will be reflected in your chart and why. And you can visually see how and where, through what channels, you can find the midpoint of those two positions in the chart. So it's very visual. For visual people that want to have an idea of who they are on a piece of paper, it's a really precise tool for you to find and see and visualize exactly what is happening. So one of the things that I get a lot from clients is, you just articulated a feeling that I had that I didn't have the words for. So it's very powerful because it frames an energy or an emotion that someone houses inward that they don't have the language for, but through the knowledge of astrology, whether it's archetypes or transits or aspects, we now have this language to explain everything that's happening inside, and people feel very heard, they feel very validated, that what they're experiencing inwardly and externally in their life as a reflection of what's going on inward actually has a meaning, has an understanding. They're not going crazy. And so it's very powerful in that way. And it allows for magic and mystery of uncertainty. I like to tell clients I can provide tools that are 95% certain, but there's still this 5% uncertainty. And that's also part of living in the midpoint, is that there are unknowns and getting very comfortable in the unknowns. And so there's part determinism based on previous karma. There's part determinism based on what the chart says, but then there's this magic and mystery of how is that going to play out? As an astrologer, when I give a session, I tell clients, well, here's 5 examples of how it can live out by house, by planet, by transit, by archetype, but I don't know. They're going to bring the magic and mystery of their life and their lived experience and their past lives to that experience. And then they come back and I'm like, oh, wow, that's how you lived it out. So there are 7 billion ways that we can live out an aspect, and we can sort of boil it down to things in our life, but there's some magic and mystery too. And that's kind of fun and exciting to know that we can live these things out in ways that we never imagined. And if we understand the low consciousness of these planets, if we understand the low consciousness of what the chart is, we actually have a choice to allow the mystery of the universe to work through us and show us a different way than what we've always done. So this is why astrology is so useful. I'm going to explain this symbol in a minute, but any questions so far? Okay. So this is the logo of the school. It's called the squared circle or the philosopher's stone. So why astrology works is actually because of this symbol. This outer circle, and today being Pi Day, the symbol of the circle is in sacred geometry, the most important and sacred geometry symbol. It all starts with the circle. Anytime there is a circle in any imagery, in any symbology, it is linked to wholeness and perfection and unity and God or the universal consciousness or undifferentiated consciousness. So think of like the perfection of the universe, and that's some of the mystery and the magic. We all come from this outer circle, no matter what your belief in is, religious inclination or philosophical inclination. We come from some energy source, and that is what animates us. And there's that inner circle here. The use of astrology as a tool is to help us get back to this perfect inner circle, union with self. And I'll show you an example of the chart in a minute, but in the chart, as things are awakened in us, these planets are awakened, because like I said, your whole wardrobe's in your closet, but you can't wear it daily. So as you decide to take out a spring fashion or a winter wardrobe, is the same thing with your planets. As you start to try these archetypes or planets on for size and they're awakened, you start to see your one storyline in your life in different lenses, in different perspectives. So you see the same story through Jupiter, through Saturn, or through Mercury, or through Mars. And you want to integrate all of those stories. It's all one storyline, but you want to integrate all of those pieces so that you can become integral or whole. And so you're not perfect. You're not able to achieve everything in anything, but the perfection or the individuation or the wholeness in this lifetime allotted to you in the chart is all there. And so throughout life, as aspects are activated and integrated, and you look at things from a different perspective, and you start to sort of, you know, unravel and become whole again, and find all these fragments of yourself that perhaps have broken off due to trauma or misunderstanding or lack of validation or low self-esteem, it brings you back to unity with self. That is ultimately the purpose of studying astrology. Man, know thyself. If you know yourself, you will know the wonders of the universe, because every single person has the same exact organs. I call the planets in astrology the psychological organs. So you have a Pluto, you have a Mars, you have a Venus, you have a Neptune. And the more you understand yourself, bringing us back to the age of Aquarius, the more you're going to understand humanity. And the more humane you're going to be towards yourself, and the more humane you're going to be to your neighbor. And so understanding the outer world, as we see it in the skies, the constellations, the stars, the asteroids, the planets, helps us understand the cosmos within. We come from that same energy, and we're a microcosm of that. And so our exact placement of all of our stars and planets and asteroids in our chart tell us who we are and what is our individual nature, our divine intelligence and our divine purpose in this lifetime. That is why we came and were sort of fragmented from that bigger piece, so that we can express that divinity in this humanity, in this human experience. What keeps us from knowing ourselves? The triangle and the square. The triangle represents thoughts, limiting beliefs, impurities, desires. Every single one of us has judgments about what we should be, when we once were, what we will be when. That is all housed in the triangle. So we see these aspects of how the planets talk to each other. So we have an actual image, a physical picture of what the thoughts are. So the way that the planets talk to one another, and what are called hard aspects, are what I call competitive voices. The more competitive the voice, the more tension there is, the more you try to exceed or be scarce, and you live out these sort of inner battles. And your physical life reflects that. That's the square. The square is the body. The square is your relationships. The square is your health. The square is your life, your job. And so that square, the limitations of your thought and your physical world, keep you from knowing yourself, that inner circle. And so the astrology chart is a perfect image of the triangle and the square, so that you can integrate all of those pieces, all of those competitive voices, those psychological organs that are sort of fighting with one another, so that you can be whole again and remember that you are indeed the universe in your little microcosm of your body. That is what makes astrology so powerful. Any questions? No? Okay. So let's go to the anatomy of an astrology chart, and then I'll show it to you. So basically, these are the main aspects of the chart. The first is the houses. So I'll go back and forth so you can kind of get the visual. There are 12 houses in an astrology chart, and they are numbered 1 to 12. They all have a meaning. Now, there are multiple meanings of every house. I'm going to kind of go through the broad strokes. There are things called derived houses so that you can even layer more meaning on top of the house. There is not a question in your life that is not available for you in the chart. You may not know more than the 12, but they all exist there. So the first house is your personality, and it can be your physical body. The second house is your money and is your value system. The third house is your thoughts, K through 12 in school, and your neighbors. The fourth house is your physical home, where you live in your home life, your childhood home, and also your lifespan from birth to death. Your fifth house is your children, entrepreneurial activities, real estate, athletics, anything you birth, not only children, but books or artwork. Your sixth house is your health, illness, day-to-day life, and your daily routine, your structure and your consistency. Seventh house in astrology is considered your first marriage. The first marriage in astrology is linked to the one that provides a child. It does not have to be legally on paper. It's the one that provides a child. If you do not have children ever, no matter how many marriages, you will always look at the seventh house. If not, you would look at the 11th. This is also some business relationships as well. And it's also your closest friends. Your eighth house is your shared resources with a business partner, with a romantic partner, with marital assets. It has to do with death and taxes. The ninth house has to do with spirituality, any travel abroad beyond where you were born. So if you were born in the United States, it's everything outside of the United States. If you were born in Britain, then it's anything outside of Britain. Has to do with gurus, teachers, mentors, and high-level consciousness. The 10th house has to do with your profession, your vocation, and it also has to do with your public image. The 11th house has to do with groups of friends, politics, anything social, not your besties, that's the 7th house, but anything that would bring you into a group setting. It's also your second marriage if your first marriage had children. And your 12th is what we call the bottom of the ocean. It's one of these subconscious houses. The 4th, the 8th, and the 12th houses are the subconscious houses. So that's where like our deepest, darkest secrets are kept. But the 12th is where most of them are kept. That's things you don't have aspect, what we would call your shadow. Any question on the houses? Those are the general headlines. But you can go deeper and deeper and deeper, and derived houses is one of the classes that we will cover in class 2 and in level 2. And you're going to see even more layers of the house, but those are sort of the main houses. Any questions on that? Okay. So next are the cusps. Cusps are extremely important. Cusps is the energy and how it has an outlet out. So for instance, this person has their first house cusp, which is known as the ascendant in Libra. If a house is missing a cusp, for instance, it's something called intercepts, the energy of that house gets stuck, and that person will articulate that they feel stuck in that part of their life or in that archetype or that sign. So every house has a cusp. So just an example, this person doesn't have an intercept, but if Capricorn, oh, they do actually. Here's Aries and here's Taurus. There's no line. Am I missing it? Oh, it is there. It's just very faint. It is there. If there was no line there and there was no cusp, that Taurus energy would have nowhere to go. So the way the person lives out that energy and the way that they kind of move it into the world is through the cusps. The cusps are very telling. So most people will say, well, Francis, I have nothing in the 10th house. No, you do. Because you have a cusp, this person has it in Cancer. So even though the house looks empty, no house is ever empty. These little lines here are called decanats. They actually fine tune the energy even more so. And you'll see that in the astrology level 1 and basics lectures, but no house is ever empty. Now, where a person has a lot of planetary activity, yes, those are going to be primary houses in their psyche. But every area has something. It's not like this person has nothing in the 7th and will never get married. That is not actually true. There is a cusp in which the energy will flow. In this case, it's Aries. And so every house has one cusp, but sometimes a sign gets stuck in a house. So a lot of times people that are born in like very cold areas, like up north, will have intercepts because the winters are so cold, it'll reflect in their chart and there won't be energy that flows out of a house, and they will articulate that they feel stuck in that house. And if there's a planet there, they'll feel even more stuck. So cusps are loaded with information. In level 4, when we start doing birthday charts, solar returns, and things like that, more evolved charts, you're going to see how important the cusps are to tell you the transition and the involvement of the soul that the person is working with. Any question about cusps?
Yes, Francis, how do you spell that word?
Yes, it's right here. CUSPS.
Oh, cusps. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So next is the planets. So at HTC, we use 12 planet/asteroids. In your program, if you are actively seeking astrology, I highly recommend, you can get your free chart online, but if you want to start deeper study, I highly recommend Astro Gold app is like $30, $40 on iTunes and Android. And it is 95% of the full app that I use on my computer, which is called SolarFire. SolarFire has a few extra features, but if you're really serious in starting, invest the $30, $40 in Astro Gold, it's worth it. Okay. And you can put as many planets, as many asteroids. There's a thing called Sabian symbols. There's a ton of stuff that you can put on your chart. We only work with the ones that are on this image. So I'm going to go through those. The sun, the moon, Mercury, Pluto, Uranus, Jupiter. This is the North Node. This is the symbol of Earth. It's going to be on the chart no matter what. Chiron is an asteroid. We use that at HTC. Saturn. The black moon is also it's called the apogee. It's like the darkest spot. It doesn't technically have a space, but it's noted as the dark side of the moon. Mars, Neptune, Venus. This is called the Wheel of Fortune. Those are the ones that we use at HTC. You can add different asteroids if you're into like the goddesses. If you want to look at Vesta or Ceres or Athena, you can add those and you can take them off. And if I'm doing a specific chart and I need to look at something, I'll add them. But the way that we teach here is using these planets and asteroids. These are linked to the 12 Olympians from Greek mythology. So why is mythology so important in astrology? If you know mythology, you will know astrology. They are hand in hand. You do not need to use Greek mythology. You can use any mythological sort of, philosophy that you like. If you like Celtic mythology, if you like Hindu mythology, all of the planets represent the same thing. The thing is that we use the Greek and Roman names, so it's easier to identify the Greek and Roman mythology, which somewhat overlap. So this would be Jupiter or Zeus. This would be Uranus. This would be Pluto or Hades. This is Mercury or Hermes. And they are linked to archetypes. Archetypes are the energies in our head that act on us. So when we are being a trickster, for instance, we're activating our Mercury. When we're looking for more of a maternal instinct, we're activating our moon. If we're looking for more of a limit and boundary archetype, we're activating our Saturn or our Sage archetypes. So in our school, we use archetypes, we use Greek and Roman mythology interchangeably. And you do have a section on who's who in mythology, all of the archetypes. In the lecture of It's All in Your Head, all of the archetypes are laid out. All of this is intertwined. There are some gods in Olympus that don't line up appropriately It's because we use mythology and we use symbology. And so a lot of the things aren't like textbook myth or textbook archetype. They're after many years of my theories and books that I've written, that I've sort of clustered some archetypes into the similar planet or myths. And that's how we teach it in HTC. But these are the main ones, and we align them with the 12 Olympians. And so if you know the myths of those gods, the relationship between those gods in mythology, you'll understand the way they play out in your head. Remember, you are that inner circle. You are divine. You come from those cosmos. So in every tradition, mythology has been used as a source to explain the human behavior or the human personality or the human experience back to its people. So whether it was a written mythology or spoken mythology, story has always been the way that we've explained who we are, and why someone does a certain thing. That's what astrology is. So the more mythology you know, the more you're going to know yourself. Sometimes we'll branch out into other mythologies. I love to dabble, but you will find the same 12 archetypes in every single mythology if you look. And in your workbook materials, there's a section under each of the planetary myths that what are some of the other myths in other traditions, so that if you're interested in learning about some of the other traditions, I highly recommend you get at least a basic mythology book or a basic mythology Bible or mythology for dummies. Even though we give you a lot of it, reading the stories and knowing the stories are going to be so helpful in you understanding everybody in your life, but primarily you. The other reason that mythology is so important is that your sun, your moon, and your ascendant, so here your sun and your moon, and then this line, this person happens to have all of it in Libra, is going to tell you the personal mythology you are living. You are a living myth. You are a living god and goddess. And the way you live out that story is through the sun, the moon, and the ascendant. All of the other planets and all of the other relationships that are called aspects are simply to reaffirm and confirm that that is your story. You have one story. You live that story in every single experience in your life. If you strip it back, that's your myth. So the more you know the planets, the more you're going to understand the myth of your 3 planets, the more you're going to understand yourself. Any questions on the planets? Next are the signs. So every single person has the same planets and every single person has the same signs, just in different places. So just to use this person's chart, this person has a triple Libra. Her sun, her moon, and her ascendant are all in Libra. So obviously that sign is going to be very active in his or her life. If you have a placement of your sun, moon, and your ascendant in 3 different signs, those are going to be the 3 main signs. But every single sign is located in the wheel. So I want you to imagine this wheel as the inner wheel that I showed you from our logo down here. That inner circle is your placement of the cosmos from the outer circle. You understand the signs, the planets, the aspects from the inner circle, you're going to understand not only your thoughts, your body, your situations, your conflicts, your life, but you're going to understand the universe. Man, know thyself, and you will know the wonders of the universe. That's what that comes from. So every sign is on the outside of the wheel. So we are not limitless. We are not allowed to be anything we want to be. That is not true. We are bound by our circle, which is the placements of these planets and how they talk to one another. And we are bound by a cross. Everybody has a cross, and you see this arrow here, and you see this arrow here. This cross is our cross. This person is on the cardinal cross. We'll talk about the crosses in a minute. You are bound to your cross. You are bound to your circle. Within that, every single thing that is presented in your life is solvable, is integratable. So this is not trickery We were not here to be tricked. We just haven't been given the tool and the education and the explanation of how to integrate these things so that we feel whole and unified again. But we are limited to a cross and a circle. So this idea of you could be absolutely anything is not true, but within your circle, yes, you can. There is a question. Your inner circle, if you look down here, Monique, at the logo, I showed it earlier. Let me show you the bigger image. This circle, this is you. This is your chart. This is your individual energy or picture of the cosmos at the moment of birth that you come to work through, integrate, and work through your entire life. And it's your representation of the divine in this body that is a reflection of the entire cosmos. Next is the midheaven. So now we're on the cross. Now, if you're an amateur to astrology, that's okay. Even some advanced people don't necessarily know this. There are different ways that you can craft a chart, okay? So there's something called an equal houses system, and there's something called a Placidus system. We use a Placidus system. The houses are not equal. So that means that this house and this house and this house are not all 30 degrees. You can see here, this one looks a little bigger. Some people will use equal houses. For more advanced level, like ancestral astrology, transgenerational astrology, we will use equal houses. So just for a moment, this particular person has like the exact cross. There are 3 crosses in astrology: the cardinal cross, the fixed cross, and the mutable cross. The cardinal cross is more of a exchange of energy that's equal, let's say. They give and they take. The mutable cross are more about taking, and the fixed cross is more about taking energy, and the mutable cross is more about giving and not taking enough. None of them are perfect. These are just the 3. If you have seen or read about Jesus, and there were 2 thieves on either side of Jesus when he died, was it Mount Gethsemane? I can never pronounce the name of the mountain. He dies on the fixed cross. The fixed cross is the cross of resurrection, of exchanging values, of the death and rebirth process. That is what we know as the 2-8 axis and the 5-11 axis. The houses of the astrology chart should, if we were born at the spring equinox, should go in order: Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, and so forth. Nobody rarely has an ascendant in Aries. Some people do, and they follow the typical sign order. But your order is going to be, so this person, this is going to be her version of Aries, Libra. Her version of Taurus is Scorpio. So it's pertinent to your own personal chart, how you're going to live out that sign. So the midheaven is what's called the cusp of the 10th house. This is on your birthday. If you would have been born at noon, at the height of the sun, that's the sign that would have been there. So this is called the height of the chart. This is the most public image that you display. I said before, it's linked to your profession and your vocation. Down here, this line opposite the midheaven is called the IC. If this is the height of the sun on your birthday, this is the depths of your shadow on your birthday, where it's pitch black. This is someone like me born at midnight. The IC is the darkest part of your chart. Then you have your ascendant, which is the mask that you wear, your personality. The more you get advanced into the course, you're actually going to realize that that's the shallow definition of the ascendant. The ascendant is actually the only sign that teaches you to raise consciousness. And then you have your descendant, which is where the sun was setting on the day of your birth, and it's also a shadow aspect. It's not as dark as the IC, but it's shadowy as well because the sun is setting. So that's an area where we're not 100% clear. Those 4 signs on the midheaven, the IC, the ascendant, and the descendant, create your cross. That's going to be your main cross. You have all 3 crosses: cardinal, mutable, and fixed, but that's going to be your main cross that you're held to. And then in Astrology Basics, there's going to be a lecture called Astrology Personality, where you can actually add up your planets by elements, fire, air, earth, and water, and by crosses, and identify your personality astrologically. It's like your astrological signature. And that's going to give you more depths about your cross. But just for today, this is going to be your main cross. In this person's case, it's the cardinal. Now, if your houses are not equal houses, as we don't use here, this person just happens to be, some of you might see that your ascendant descendant is on the cardinal, and let's say your IC and your midheaven is on the fixed. It's because the houses aren't equal. My recommendation is use the ascendant descendant cross, and that's the cross. Any questions about that? Depends where you are in your education. All of this is covered in your video content, but I just want to kind of give you the full breadth. What was the question? Yes.
About the shadow and the descendant. Like, can you elaborate more?
Yes. So that's a great question. So this here is your descendant. And for those of you who know my work, I write a lot about that in terms of what your parents gave you in terms of their marriage, so that you can live out in your relationships, even though it's a shadow aspect. So your partner will oftentimes have, if not the sign on your descendant or any one of these little cusps, these signs, they will maybe have the characteristics, because it's a shadow aspect of you that you inherited from your parents' relationship. It does not matter if you never lived with your parents, it's subconscious from the moment of conception. You inherited that language or that trait or that relationship style. So this is a shadow that you can't see. So one of my favorite quotes of mine is, your fastest way to enlightenment is through relationship, because your partner, just like your friends, because the seventh house cusp is your marriage and your best friends, will project on the shadow. What you judge in them is a shadow aspect in you. And it's oftentimes associated with the descendant. The descendant is also a secret language. It is a secret component that your parents had in their relationship. Again, it doesn't matter if it was a one-night stand, that they have passed on to you to be part of the tribe. Do this secret language in your relationships, and you're one of us. And it's not healthy. So that's why it's a shadow aspect. Was that okay? Any questions on that?
So in this person's chart, their parents passed on this
An
Aries like
yeah.
language.
And you'll see in the Aries content all of the keywords. And when you get into later astrology levels, or if you do the consciousness coaching, there's a whole lot of content and a whole book that's just about the descendant sign. So there's a lot. I mean, this is your life on a piece of paper. This is not shallow. This is nothing fluffy. There's depth and depth upon depth of everything in astrology. But that's like the surface level answer.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. So we covered the midheaven, the ascendant, the descendant. I want to talk a little bit more about the ascendant and the IC. So at the height of noon on your birthday, doesn't matter what time you were born, this is the sign that is linked to the midheaven. That is going to be the persona, or perhaps the profession that you seek, because you feel very comfortable in that light, in that guise. So the depths of your subconscious, one of the 3 subconscious houses is the 4th. The IC is the cusp of the 4th. The 8th house cusp, I said, was death and taxes, secrets and shadows, and shared resources. That's another shadow aspect of the chart. And the 12th house cusp is karma, past lives, things that are suppressed. Those 3 cusps rule the subconscious houses. However, the 4th house cusp is where midnight was on your birthday. So that cusp is extremely important. It's a shadow aspect that you keep hidden, and it's inherited in the childhood. The 4th house, the entirety of the 4th house, is from birth to death. It is your lifespan house. So that cusp talks about those initial moments when you're brought back from the birthing center or the hospital, exactly what your psyche understood the shadow to be that needs to be suppressed and projected onto others. So it's a very dark placement in the chart. If you understand it, it's one of those cusps that give you a lot of shadow information. The ascendant. There is a superficial look at the ascendant, and then there's the depth of the ascendant. There's an entire ascendant lecture on every sign and all of the details around the ascendant. So I'm just going to surfacely touch on it. In most astrology programs, you're going to be told that the ascendant is your mask, is your personality. It will have to do with your look, your physical body. So here, this person is a Libra. Obviously, they're going to be very graceful and beautiful and sensual and sexy, everything that Libra and its ruling goddess Aphrodite reflects. So it does have some sort of superficial tendency. However, we are only given what's called one decanat in a chart to raise consciousness in an entire lifetime. So these little lines are called decanats. And so each sign has 3 decanats. So this is Libra. There are 3 air signs. Libra is an air sign. So here's Gemini, here is Uranus, and here is, no, this is Libra, I'm sorry, this is Aquarius, and this is Gemini. Each one of these little lines and this bigger line here is a section. It's literally this big, it's an inch. That is all you get for spiritual growth in a lifetime. That's it. That's it. Most people don't even do that. That would be the whole integration of everything in your chart by the last breath. So we get this much. That decanat, that inch, if you integrate your ascendant sign, truly, you don't think it's someone else, because that's the thing. Most of the time we think it's outside of self. We project it onto others, or what I call tiptoe. When we actually integrate this sign, we will raise our consciousness. The transmutation of the one limiting belief, that triangle that I told you that keeps us from knowing ourselves, and that is how we know ourselves, and that is how we raise consciousness. And it takes an entire lifetime, and sometimes we don't even achieve that in a lifetime, to move the 1 inch. So this idea that the ego teaches us that we're running late, or we're behind, or we should be, or we will be, is nonsense. We have this much to go, and most of us don't. There's a question. So this chart, the growth is Uranus. Okay, so you're talking about the decanat. In this particular person, it's Libra, integrating Libra, and yes, the Uranus decanat of Libra. But that we'll cover in more advanced classes. But just for today, know that the ascendant sign is the sign that needs to be integrated. Great. Any questions about that? Okay, degrees. Every planet has degrees. The degrees go from 0 to 29. Everything in astrology is 30. That's it. Starts at 0, it goes to 29. The way that the planets are laid out in terms of their degrees will tell us some things about psychology, about the person. There are certain things called critical degrees. If you're born in a certain sign later, for instance, 29 is a critical degree. Many people will say, I'm a cusp baby. That's a 0 degree. Those degrees are important. But what I want to kind of bring home today is how much the sun and the moon matter in terms of the degree. There's 29. We're going to concentrate on the sun, which is the main solar aspect, or who we're here to become. The first 10 degrees are equating to going up a mountain. So if you're born in the first 10 days of your sign, you're going to be between 0 and 9. Your life is going to be like ascending a mountain. If you're born between 10 and 19 degrees of your sun, it's going to be like being atop of a mountain looking out at the view. And if you're born at 20 to 29, it's like descending the mountain. And all of this is going to make sense, not individually. We don't piecemeal a chart. Okay. So when people say to me, oh, I have Venus in the second, I can make money in the beauty industry, that's piecemealing the chart. We're not piecemeal. We see things holistically at HTC. So that is just one of many details that we pay attention to, is what is the degree of your sun? Is this lifetime more about a journey outward, first 10 degrees? Is it about a journey more inward, last 10 degrees? And that, again, it's telling a story. This is you on a piece of paper. It tells a story. You're not one thing. You're not your eye color. You're not, the size of your foot. So why would we only be Venus or only be Jupiter? So that's one of the sort of the fluffiness of what astrology has been promoted as up until now. And I do believe that with the age of Aquarius, that's going to be changing. But we teach here holistically. Who are you as a whole person? Where does that piece of your sun degree matter in the whole big picture and story of your life? And so every planet has a degree. Now, I told you that these planets, I call them the psychological organs. So your sun is your masculine or rational principle. Your moon is your more feminine principle. Your Venus is your lover principle, or the way you care for others or your desires. Your Neptune is your innocence principle, your spirituality, perhaps your codependence and your addictive tendencies. All of these planets live out in your head as the gods and goddesses from Olympus that we call archetypes. When these psychological organs talk, they're either speaking positively to one another or negatively. I call those the competitive voices if they don't speak positively, if they're negative, or the collaborative voices if they get along. The collaborative voices are your toolbox. They're your good coping skills. They're your strengths. Those don't pose a problem. Those are the ones you use to help you get through your competitive voices or the hard aspects. Aspects are the official astrological term of how planets talk. The degree is how they're talking. If they're really, really close within what's called an orb, a 5-degree orb, they're talking in each other's ear. If not, they're very far away, like one mountain to another, they're not going to hear what it's saying. So the degree has to do with what's called an orb. So this person has a Venus at 13 and a Neptune at 18. That's a 5-degree orb. Visually, they look like they're right next to each other, but they're really at the height of how they can listen to each other. Imagine like putting the cup, remember the cup string, and you would listen through the door, you would talk to your friend. It's the same idea. The closer they are, the more the degree is tight, has a tighter orb, the more impact that has in the person's psyche. The further planets are from another, and depending the aspects, hard or soft, is how much of that strength or that weakness they're going to live out in their life. There's 2 main orbs. The sun and the moon get a 10-degree orb. Those are the most important parts in the chart. Our masculine principle, our feminine principle. Call it mother, father. Call it emotional and rational, whatever you want. Those are the luminaries. They're the most important part of the chart. They get a 10-degree orb from any planet. Everything else gets a 5-degree orb. And it's impactful only when they're close together. Any questions about degrees?
I actually have a question.
Yes.
So you mentioned something about like inward and outward, like when it's like a lower degree or like a higher degree.
Oh, in terms of your sun.
Yeah.
So everyone's sun is either between 0 and 29. The first 10-degree, think of going up a mountain. It's almost like moving away from self. You might need to develop more of extroversion. You might have to develop more of a vocation or something to give the public, for instance. And if you're at a lower degree, like for instance, my son is at 23, I'm more about an inward life. Now, again, this is just one piece of the story. I have a Sagittarius ascendant, which requires extroversion, but I have a very introverted nature you'd never know about. So it's just one piece of the story. But yes, the way that the sun is moving away from in terms of the degrees or coming towards can speak to part of the story of your life, of what you're here to do. The sun and the moon, of course, where they're located, houses, aspects, all of it is a full story. You're a stew, you're not just one ingredient. But together, all of that makes you you. Does that help?
Yes, because what I'm trying to understand is that this person, for instance, has like a more of like an extroverted outward degree in their sun. It being, I believe it's the second, I can't really see.
Yeah, that's a 2 degrees. Okay.
In this house of depths
Okay.
and subconscious.
Great question. So
Thank you.
the chart, besides being knowledge, which is our job to impart you the knowledge and the lectures and the content, there is a part of it that's intuitive. That's part of the mystery and the magic of it. When you look at a chart, and that's what I teach all students, what's the first thing that jumps out at you? In this person's case, it's going to be the 12th house and the second house. These are very clear, heavy, what I call top heavy houses. So if something is top heavy over here, that means over here, it's not getting as much attention in their psyche. So what do we do when something is so sort of potent or compact in one part of our chart? We project the other part of the chart, the other house, which is called the axis, onto other people. So for instance, this person, let's just use the second house. There's nothing in the 8th house. The second house is very top heavy. They're going to project onto lovers, sexual partners, business relationships, all of this imbalance. So visually we're looking, but what she's asking is another layer too. If the sun likes to be in the sky and the symbolism of the 12th house is the bottom of the ocean, how is this person going to live out their light and bright sun solar nature if they're stuck in the bottom of the ocean? That's going to be part of their journey. Add to that they have a 2-degree Libra that's about extroversion. They're going to have to work very hard to be seen to get out of the bottom of the ocean. So I would go, oh, well, let's look at what sign makes you feel, which is at noon, right? Is the cusp of the 10th, which is our public image. And I would invite them to really channel their Cancer qualities, perhaps in their vocation or in their profession. So you start to see how you're going to give guidance based on the struggles that the person has, based on where the planets are placed in what sign. I will tell you that I do one key thing with every single reading. And if you've ever had a reading from me, I find what is called the incongruence. Every single chart has an incongruence. You want to go this way, and there's one big thing, usually in the sun, moon, and the ascendant, that says go another. And I'll just use mine. I have a sun in Pisces and a moon in Cancer that is introverted in the 4-8 houses, which are introverted. Anyone who knows me will not tell you that I am introverted, but I have a very deep personal life. My ascendant is Sagittarius. You can't get more extroverted. That's my incongruence. How do I balance this introverted internal depth life with a just extroverted personality or outgoing stance? So your chart will boil down to one incongruence, and it will be repeated and repeated and repeated with placements of the planets, aspects, transits, etc. Any questions about that? Next is retrograde. So most people hear retrograde and they think of Mercury retrograde. So here's retrograde. It's this little RX. Most people have at least one retrograde. Now, the black moon is often retrograde. The nodes are always retrograde. They don't count. Retrograde, from a past life perspective, is considered a planet that the person has to work through even harder in this lifetime. It's like a planet that, if you use a telescope, appears to be going backwards. And so in your psyche, it's something that might be stuck. Now, later on in more advanced levels, we're going to do something called progress charts, where we're going to talk about retrogrades, and we're going to look at the soul's journey and when a retrograde goes direct or when a planet goes retrograde, because it could go either way if you have a trauma. That's more advanced. But if you have a retrograde that isn't the nodes, that isn't Chiron or the black moon, just the planets, that's going to be a spot where you might have to work a little harder in revving up that archetype or getting that archetype to flow. It's kind of like an intercept. The house that doesn't have a cusp gets stuck. So this person has Saturn, and we're not going to look at Chiron. So Saturn would be a planet that might cause more problems. It's already a planet that causes problems for everybody because it's the planet of alchemy and limits and boundaries, but this person might have an even harder time. So retrogrades have to do with past life and karma and places that maybe we feel uber stuck. I've probably only done 2 people, and I think one of them is on this call, in my life that have no retrogrades. If you have no retrogrades, the belief is you're done, you don't come back. Now, the soul eventually comes back over and over and over again. But whatever this 8-time life cycle that you share with people is done. That's going to be in your Cancer module. You're going to learn about the phase of your moon and which placement, which lifetime you're in with people and karmic placements and such. But usually if you have a retrograde planet, it's a karmic placement. There's some additional lesson there depending on the meaning of it. Any questions? Okay.
So I am that once in a lifetime person.
I thought you were on. Marietta has nothing in retrograde. So in this 8-phase cycle, as we look at a soul level, we look at it from the phase of the moon, what phase you're in of 8. And then if you add to that no retrogrades, then you're done with that. Perhaps it could be the location you're born, that gender, that part of the world. These are obviously things that we speculate. That's part of the magic and the mystery. It's kind of like if you're born, and this is for when you do the Cancer lecture, but in the Cancer class, you're not only going to learn your phase of the moon that you're born into. And I just put out a whole book called The Shadow Side of the Mother's Love, and all of this is spelled out on there, but that's in your 4th class. You're also, for instance, if you're a balsamic moon, it's your last lifetime of 8 with these people. So part of your soul's journey is to leave some wisdom. So that would also be, for instance, for Marietta, to leave something for future generations, like a legacy. So it also helps you to identify what you're here to do. You know, I'm a very active moon. I'm in the crescent phase, and I'm active and always go, go, go. So my chart supports that, the placement of my Mars, the way I put out content, you know, so you start to understand why you are you, and it helps you make sense of all the pieces of your story. There's a lot. This is just sort of the highlights of what you're going to learn, but it's pretty in depth, as you can see. Any questions? This is your time to hit me up with whatever you want to know, what part of the class it's in, a question you might have, something you've read. You got me. I'm here for you. No questions? Is anyone in awe about how amazing the depth of this study is of oneself?
Yes, it is. Francis, quick question. Did you do the little book already? Did you update it already? Is that already done or not yet?
Which book?
The
4
study
have come
guide.
out already this year.
No,
they were
no,
all
no.
written last year, but the Moon book just came out. The Descendant book on relationships just came out. The laws, all of the metaphysical laws, are found in your chart, by the way. All of the universal laws.
I meant, I'm sorry, like the study guide, remember that little by little, and you told me at some point, she was like, don't print them anymore because I'm going to work on them.
Yes, Jennifer, we'll talk to her after. You'll get access. Jen Marietta took the class before our LMS was ready. So I promised her all the pretty content. So yes.
So that's already done?
Yeah, that's all done. It's all in the program. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
All the
Okay,
videos,
great.
all the content, everything. Yeah. So anybody who has been studying with, you guys are my loyals, you know, will get like the nice new pretty content compliments of my BFF / business partner, who is the image queen. This woman has put together these PowerPoints beautifully and has made these videos amazing. Like, I do not have that production capacity, so shout out to Jen. Any questions? Nothing? Man, know thyself.
Or maybe we don't know what we need to ask.
No.
I have a comment.
Or maybe the more we know ourselves, the more questions we have. We're just trying to digest it all.
Definitely, the more questions, the more you know you don't know, and the more you want to know. The program has no shortage of content. The coaching calls like this aren't going to be always so lecture-y based. Obviously, this is our inauguration call and you know, our pie party type of thing, and this is the pie, right? But it's for answer the questions so that you can apply and learn. In Astrology 1, it's the basics. So I've gone through highlights, but there's a lot more into the basics. Astrology 2, you learn what are called the aspects. So let me just kind of tell you all about the different layers. These planets, when they talk to one another, they have aspects. So they're saying, like I said, collaborative or competitive. When you start to understand, for instance, in this person's chart, their Saturn is opposite, let's say, their Pluto. This is a sage or a limit. This is the magician or a manipulative aspect of them. This could cause depression. So if someone comes and they're like, I suffer from depression, or Saturn, which is limits, opposite Uranus, which is no limits, the person doesn't know if they're always freedom or always structured. They're constantly breaking down, you know, causing chaos and problems, and then putting up new boundaries and new rules. Like, that's never going to achieve that self-mastery or that balance. That's going to be excess. That's going to be scarcity. So you start to see how all of it aligns, all the metaphysical principles, the spiritual laws, the archetypes, the myths, the symbols. I mean, this is an eternal study. I have been studying astrology for over 15 years, and I've probably just scratched the surface. And I think I know quite a bit, and I still know nothing. So it's just such an extensive study. So when you understand that you're going through something physically, emotionally, mentally, relationship-wise, financially, and you have a visual, you're like, oh my God, I want to know more. So the way that the planets talk, those are aspects. All of level 2 is every planet with every other planet in every aspect, so that you know everything that can possibly live out, minus the mystery and specialness of your story, but you have the big thread. So for instance, I had a client the other day who had Uranus Pluto, and he almost was diagnosed with cancer. He was on a cancer scare. And this is an existential crisis. And I said, okay, you don't have cancer, but I'm sure you thought, what if? And you're 27 years old. And he's like, absolutely. So that was where we sort of started the session. So it gives you also a starting point in terms of where to start looking at what part is aspected. In level 3, we're going to do transits. Transits are the placement of the planet right now. For instance, Venus and Mars today and Saturn are all in Aquarius. So wherever this person has Aquarius, which is here, they have Saturn, Mars, and Venus. Something in their 4th house is activated. Absolutely. So we start to see why now I want a baby. Why now I get sick. Why now I want to go away to school. Why now I need to go on a trip. Why now I need to go back to school. The transits activate what I call the dormant archetypes or planets, and they wake up a part of you. And I told you before that the transits wake you up so that you could see your story from a different perspective, from a church, from a school, from a relationship, from the top of the mountain, from the bottom of the ocean. It's metaphorically to find out your story in all these different aspects so that you understand yourself whole from all different viewpoints. And so that wakes up things in us that we never thought we needed or wanted. And all of a sudden, we have a desire to get married or move to another country or go back to school. So that's level 3. And then level 4 is special topics. We do transgenerational trauma. We do birthday charts that are called solar returns. We do progress charts, which are how is the soul progressing through a lifetime. We do prenatal charts to know what was going on during the pregnancy that planted all the seeds for what your life is going to be. There's a lot of cool aspects. We do astrocartography, where you can live, where you can recommend someone go to school, career psychology and astrology, like what's a good vocation and later in life, what's a good career choice in school. So there's a lot of special topics in level 4. And we will have ongoing workshops too, monthly workshops. I try in every workshop to do astrology, cosmology, philosophy, metaphysical laws. So even if you're not in the astrology program, you'll get tastes of that throughout every program. All of our programs cover pretty much, if you looked at our website, the same concepts, but this astrology is really, really specific to understanding your chart. And then if you want to be a professional astrologer, which you absolutely can with this program, that's the part of the coaching calls where we give you the practice and the practice and the practice. That is missing, I can tell you. I had to seek that out, and I was very fortunate to find a teacher that taught me real practical astrology with the metaphysical concept. So what we're offering is something really special. And I want to celebrate on my birthday because this is my baby. And so I invite you, if you haven't signed up already, to sign up, try out a level. It's phenomenal. You won't regret it. Any other questions? Anything that you're curious about that you can find out about in your chart that you may think that you can, but you don't know? Anything, hit me.
I have a question.
Okay.
I not only have a question, but a comment as well.
Okay.
But I'll ask my question first. So you had mentioned something about how Aquarius, how like, I think it was Venus, Uranus, and something else that are in Aquarius right now.
Yes,
And
Venus, Mars, and Saturn are all in Aquarius. That's called the stellium. When like this person has a stellium, anytime that there's three together, it's a stellium. That's going to be an important part in their aspect. Think in their psychology. Think of like wearing a tattoo that doesn't ever get removed. But yes, that's happening now today.
So now let's say we're looking at someone's chart who just in their natal chart has Venus and Saturn in Aquarius, right? In the fourth, for example. How does this transit relate to them?
Okay, so that's called a transit. I'm going to share a chart so you can see. Okay, so this is a transit chart. This is the inner wheel. This is your piece of the pie, your inner circle, your astrology chart, your natal chart that never changes. This is the sky today, and this is the date. And you can go fast in the past, days, months, weeks, years. You can go into the future. So today, here's Saturn in Aquarius. Here's Mars and Venus in Aquarius. In this particular person's chart, they're activating this part of their chart. So that's level 3 when we do transits. What parts of you are awoken? What parts of you are being sort of, woken up to move you in a direction, to give you a new perspective of something that you've never tried before, or it explains why someone enters your life of a particular sign in a particular place, why all of a sudden you run into someone from the past, why all of a sudden you need to go to India to study Ayurveda and meet your best friend. These things are all found in the chart. So they activate and they prompt us. Thank you, Henry. Talk soon. So the magic and the mystery, free will and determinism both exist. The chart is there, and there are certain things that are quote unquote determined. Okay. That does not mean that, for instance, I had cancer during a 5-year period where Pluto was activating my Mars. Everyone born at that point didn't get breast cancer, didn't get divorced, didn't lose their hair, didn't lose their life, right? Like that was the way I lived it out. And so that's the mystery and the magic and the free will. So we oftentimes say that you may not be able to control what happens, but you get to control your attitude. That's part of the free will. What are you choosing to do with that experience? So as an astrologer, I offer what are called low consciousness and high consciousness opportunities to the client. Every single planet is an archetype. Every single planet has 2 states of consciousness, low consciousness, high consciousness. In every one of your lectures in Astrology 1, every sign and every planet is spoken at a high consciousness and low consciousness. There is no wrong choice. The client decides. So when I do a reading, I say, well, you can live it out this low consciousness way or this high consciousness way. And I do not take someone's free will. That's spiritual law. They get to pick. My job is to provide the options so that when it shows up with a transit and activates them, they say, oh, I have a choice to pick. So usually what happens is that the same planets year after year after year are activated, And it's like Groundhog Day, right? After 5, 10 times of stepping in the puddle, you're like, oh, wait, there's a puddle. Maybe I should move a little bit to the right or a little to the left. And so we're constantly nudged. That's why you have one story, one myth with your sun, moon, ascendant, and 1 inch to move over. That's it. We're really not here doing these amazingly big things, but we don't even, most of the time, we're scared to even move the 1 inch over to the side or up or down. So the planets are constantly showing us, well, if you do it this way, if you do it this way, so we can see all the different inches so that perhaps we can grow into our 1 inch and really integrate the chart. That becomes your whole, cosmos integrated, your whole, you're no longer fragmented. That's the piece of the pie. And that's what you help feed another person, if you choose to, with what you've learned in a lifetime. Any other questions? Nothing else? Current students going through their modules, any questions about what you've covered so far? Okay. So basically, every module has pre-recorded content, a workbook, tons of information. I do recommend that before each coaching call, you come with at least something studied and reviewed so that you have some questions so that I can help you. But I always have something prepared, of course, to teach, but I want to make it very personal so that you get your chart information. And I'll always have my program to bring up your chart. And if you're on a call and you want to look at your chart, you can spend 20 minutes looking at your chart. That's what we're going to be doing on these calls, making very personal, especially now that we're starting, that we're small. You'll have that personalized attention from me. So if nothing else, Jen, do you want to add anything about the school content, how to reach you?
I don't think so, other than the email that you sent out definitely had the link to my Calendly. Anyone wants to book like a Zoom or a phone call to talk about any of this. And I'm easy to find an email as well.
So this is ongoing enrollment. There's no end date. So if you don't start today was like the first inaugural coaching call. You can start next year. It's an ongoing thing. Level 1 is always ongoing, level 2, etc. So there's no rush or anything, but we just wanted to provide that. If you're just on to kind of see what we're about, you will get this recording plus one of our pre-recorded modules, so you can kind of see how the content is broken up into small chunks so that it's manageable, because I do know I talk a lot and most of you have had a reading where I don't shut up for 2 hours straight. So I've learned and I've gotten much guidance on the inches that I should be giving in each individual lecture. So I learned. If nothing else, then thank you all for coming. I am beyond grateful for Jennifer making this possibility and you guys sharing my birthday with me, and that this child was birthed and sort of, presented on today. And the symbolism of, thank you, Laura, the symbolism of Pi Day, because of the wholeness and the circumference of the circle, and the circle being the symbol of sacred geometry. And if you didn't know that, today is Einstein's birthday, and Stephen Hawking, I believe, he died today. He chose to die. And I think there's a lot of symbolism in those messages. So I don't pretend to be anything like Einstein or Hawking, but I'm honored to have chosen this birthday at midnight to do this work, and the little bit that I've learned, passed it on to anyone who can benefit from it. Thank you.
Frances,
Yes.
could we sing you happy birthday?
Yes.
So let's do it. And you want it on the recording?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Good,
Let's
everybody.
do it big,
1,
right?
2, 3. Let's do it. Happy birthday
To
to
you.
you. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you,
Happy birthday,
dear
dear
Francis.
Happy
Happy
birthday
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 to you.
to you.
Thank you.
Obviously, we didn't practice, but it was heartfelt.
I appreciate it. So I'm wearing my heart shirt that was gifted from me from one of my dear friends. And you know, I wrote this book called Spiritual Adulting, and I just actually submitted final edits yesterday. So it'll be published in a few weeks. And it's basically all of the archetypes or all the planets from astrology in the order that I understand us to grow with the archetypes. And I call it the spiritual adulting ladder. Once you get to the top, then you have to drop right back into your heart and realize you know nothing. And that's where I'm at in this birthday. So 49 for me is just about opening my heart space. And so for everyone that came and Jen to make this a possibility and having my daughter right next to me, if
everyone.
my heart has not been open in the past, it's cracking wide open this year. And I hope that each of you feel that, because I love you all.
I have one more question.
Yes.
What made you choose that chart?
I have no clue. That was just one of,
Yeah, because imagine being.
yeah, that's not your chart.
No,
but-
I know.
But
I
yeah.
know what my chart.
But yeah, you're one of the future Libras that I have in my storage database of charts.
I thought it was very helpful.
And actually being a triple Libra, that's Venus, 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 which is the message of my birthday year. I guess it's on point. I didn't plan that actually, but
I know. I was like, when I looked at it.
so. Okay, I think there's a couple more comments. Thank you, Monique. Thank you, Laura. Thank you guys for coming. I hope you learned something and you're excited to get started in the content. And I can't wait to talk astrology every week.
Enjoy your birthday.
Thank you.